Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the stars through the main viewport. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across 17 star systems like seeds scattered by the wind. His ship was exploring the Kepler 442 system, looking for new worlds that humans could call home. The mission was routine, just another survey run in the endless expansion of human space. The Defiant was not a warship. She was built for exploration, with advanced sensors and laboratories instead of weapons. Jake had served on her for 3 years, mapping new systems and cataloging planets. His crew of 42 scientists and engineers had become like family to him. They trusted him to keep them safe in the vast darkness between stars. Jake was reading sensor reports when Lieutenant Bobby Chun called out from the communications station. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors. Multiple contacts approaching from the outer system." Jake moved to Bobby's station and looked at the display. The sensors showed dozens of objects moving toward them at incredible speed. "How many contacts?" Jake asked, his voice calm despite the sudden tension on the bridge. 47 ships, sir. They're big, much larger than anything we've built. Their technology is completely different from ours." Bobby's fingers danced across his console, trying to get more information. "Commander, they're not human ships." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. In all of humanity's expansion across the stars, they had never encountered another intelligent species. The discovery should have been cause for celebration, but something about these ships made him uneasy. They moved with military precision, arranged in perfect battle formations. "Open all channels," Jake ordered. "This is Commander Jake Morrison, of the United Earthship Defiant. We are explorers from the human colonies. Please respond." The reply came immediately, but not in any human language. The voice was deep and harsh, speaking in clicking sounds that made Jake's skin crawl. Then a translation began, spoken in perfect English by a cold, emotionless voice. "Primitive creatures of the third planet. You have entered space claimed by the Zephyrian Collective. Your species will submit to our authority or face destruction. You have 1 rotation of your planet to surrender your colonies and accept subjugation." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Their faces showed the same shock and fear he felt. These aliens, these Zephyrians, were not interested in peaceful contact. They wanted to conquer humanity before most humans even knew aliens existed. "How many ships did you say?" Jake asked Bobby again. 47 in this group, sir. But my sensors are detecting more contacts throughout the system. I count at least 300 vessels total." Jake's blood turned cold. 300 alien warships against humanity's small exploration and defense fleet. The humans had maybe 200 ships total, spread across 17 systems. Most of them were cargo haulers and civilian vessels, not warships. "Send an emergency message to all human colonies," Jake ordered. "Code Red, first contact situation. Hostile alien force detected. Recommend immediate defensive preparations." While Bobby worked on the message, Jake opened a channel to the lead alien ship. "This is Commander Morrison. We are not warriors. We are explorers. Surely we can discuss this peacefully." The alien voice returned, and Jake could hear amusement in the harsh clicking sounds. "Your protests are meaningless. The Zephyrian Collective has conquered 43 species across the galaxy. Your kind will be the 44th. Resistance will only increase your suffering." The alien fleet began to move closer, and Jake could see their ships clearly now. They were massive, dark vessels covered in weapon ports and armor plating. Each one was 3 times the size of the Defiant. They moved like predators, confident and deadly. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Susan Park from the navigation station. "I'm detecting weapons charging on the lead ships. They're targeting us." Jake made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running, he activated the ship's emergency beacon. Every human colony would receive the signal and know that first contact had gone terribly wrong. He also activated the ship's data recorder, ensuring that everything they learned about these aliens would survive even if they did not. "All hands, prepare for combat," Jake announced over the ship's intercom. "We may be explorers, but we are still human. We will not surrender without a fight." The Defiant had only 2 small defensive lasers designed to clear debris from their path. Against the massive alien warships, they were useless, but Jake's crew prepared to use them anyway. They also began charging their industrial tools, turning mining lasers and construction equipment into improvised weapons. The first alien shot struck the Defiant's port side, ripping through the hull. Like paper, the ship shuddered and alarms began screaming. Jake was thrown against his command chair, tasting blood in his mouth. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power failed. "Damage report!" Jake shouted over the noise. "Hull breach. On decks 3 and 4, Susan reported. "We've lost life support to the rear sections." "Emergency power only," Jake looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet was surrounding them, but they were not firing to destroy. They wanted to capture the Defiant intact, probably to study human technology. Jake realized this gave him one last chance to strike back. "Bobby, can you overload the main reactor?" "Yes, sir." "But that would destroy the ship and everything within a kilometer." "Do it. If we're going to die, we'll take some of them with us." The bridge crew worked frantically as more alien shots struck the ship. Jake watched the reactor temperature climb toward critical levels. The alien ships moved closer, probably planning to board the Defiant. They had no idea what humans were capable of when cornered. "Reactor overload in 30 seconds, Bobby announced. Jake opened a final channel to the alien fleet. "This is Commander Morrison. You want to know about humans? We would rather die than kneel, remember that." The UES Defiant exploded in a ball of nuclear fire that vaporized 2 alien ships and damaged 3 others. The explosion sent a shockwave through the alien fleet and a message across human space. The war for humanity's survival had begun. News of the Defiant's destruction reached Captain Lisa Harper at Outpost 7 within hours. The small research station orbited a gas giant in the outer system, home to 1,200 scientists and engineers. Harper had been a military officer before accepting command of the peaceful outpost. Now she wished she had kept her old weapons. Training sharp, the Zephyrian fleet was already moving toward human space, and Outpost 7 was directly in their path. Harper knew that evacuation ships carrying 30,000 colonists were still traveling through the system, defenseless, against the alien armada. Someone had to buy them time to escape. Harper looked out at the stars and made the same choice Jake Morrison had made. She would not surrender. She would not run. She would stand and fight no matter the cost. The aliens were about to learn that humans were not like the other species they had conquered. Humans were something new and terrible, and they would make the galaxy remember their name. Captain Lisa Harper stood in the command center of Outpost 7, watching the alien fleet approach on the main display. The Zephyrian ships moved like wolves hunting prey, their dark hulls gleaming under the light of the distant star. Harper had been expecting this moment since Jake Morrison's final message reached the station. 3 days ago, the outpost was not built for war. It was a research facility designed to study the gas giant below and the strange energy readings from its moons. 1,200 people lived and worked on the station, mostly scientists and engineers who had never fired a weapon in their lives. The station's defenses consisted of 2 small laser arrays meant to destroy asteroids, not warships. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Ryan Cooper from the engineering station. "The evacuation ships are still 6 hours away from the jump point. They're carrying 30,000 colonists from the inner system." Harper nodded grimly. Those ships were slow. Cargo haulers packed with families fleeing the alien advance. They had no weapons and no shields. If the Zephyrians got past Outpost 7, those people would be defenseless. "Send a message to the evacuation fleet," Harper ordered. "Tell them to increase speed and prepare for emergency jump. We'll buy them as much time as we can." The alien fleet stopped just outside weapons range, and Harper received the same message that Jake Morrison had heard. The cold, emotionless voice demanded immediate surrender and threatened destruction if humans continued to resist. Harper listened to the entire message before responding. "This is Captain Lisa Harper of Outpost 7. We are not soldiers, but we are human. That means we choose to fight rather than surrender. Come and take our station if you can." The alien response was swift and brutal. Energy beams lanced out from the lead ships, striking the station's outer hull. The impact threw Harper against her command chair, and emergency alarms began screaming throughout the station. The lights flickered as power conduits overloaded. "Damage." "Report," Harper shouted over the noise. "Hull breach on level 15, reported Dr. Karen Bell from the medical station. "We've lost atmospheric containment in the research labs. 3 people are injured, but the emergency bulkheads are holding." Harper looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet was positioning itself for a prolonged assault, clearly planning to take the station intact. They wanted to capture human technology and probably take prisoners for study. Harper had no intention of giving them either. "Ryan, can you modify the mining charges we use on the asteroid belt?" "Yes, Captain. We've got about 200 charges in storage. I can rig them as improvised explosives." "Do it. Set them up throughout the station. If these aliens want our home, they'll have to take it piece by piece." The siege began in earnest as the Zephyrian fleet moved closer. Their weapons were precise and calculated, designed to disable rather than destroy. They cut through the station's hull with surgical precision, creating boarding points while leaving the main structure intact. Harper realized they were dealing with experienced conquerors who had done this many times before. The first boarding pod struck the station's lower levels. Harper watched on the security monitors as alien soldiers poured through the breaches. They were tall, humanoid creatures with gray skin and cold yellow eyes. They moved with military precision, sweeping through the corridors with advanced weapons and armor. "Security teams to level 12, Harper ordered. "Prepare to repel boarders." The station's security force consisted of only 30 people, most of them former military like Harper. They faced hundreds of alien soldiers with superior weapons and armor. But they had one advantage the aliens did not expect. They knew every inch of the station. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Foster led the security teams in a fighting retreat through the station's corridors. They used maintenance shafts and service tunnels to launch surprise attacks on the alien forces. Ryan Cooper had rigged improvised explosives throughout the station, and the security teams used them to devastating effect. The first major battle occurred in the station's main laboratory. Foster's team had barricaded themselves behind overturned tables and equipment racks. When the aliens breached the entrance, they found humans who refused to surrender even when outnumbered 10-1. "Take cover," Foster shouted as alien energy beams scorched the air around them. The humans returned fire with their improvised weapons, using mining lasers and construction tools against the alien soldiers. The battle was fierce and bloody, but the humans held their ground. Dr. Bell had set up a medical station in the main conference room, treating wounded security personnel and civilians. She worked without regard for her own safety, crawling through damaged corridors to reach injured people. When alien soldiers tried to capture her medical supplies, she fought them off with a plasma cutter. The aliens were shocked by the human resistance. They had conquered 43 species, and none had fought with such desperate determination. Most civilizations surrendered after losing a few hundred soldiers. The humans at Outpost 7 fought for every room, every corridor, every inch of their home. Communications officer Peter Hayes maintained contact with the evacuation fleet throughout the siege. His equipment was damaged by alien fire, but he jury-rigged repairs using spare parts and sheer determination. He broadcast the battle across human space, ensuring that every colony knew about the sacrifice being made at Outpost 7. "The evacuation ships have reached the jump point," Hayes reported during a brief lull in the fighting. "They're beginning their escape sequence?" Harper smiled grimly. The station was falling apart around them, but they had accomplished their mission. 30,000 human lives would survive because of their sacrifice. The aliens could have their victory, but it would cost them dearly. The siege continued for 47 days. The aliens had expected to capture the station in a few hours, But the human defenders turned every level into a battlefield. They used the station's own systems against the invaders, venting atmosphere to suffocate, alien soldiers and overloading power conduits to create electrical barriers. Ryan Cooper became a legend among the defenders. He led teams of engineers who sabotaged alien equipment and created improvised weapons from industrial machinery. When the aliens tried to use their own technology against the humans, Cooper's teams found ways to turn it against them. The final battle took place in the command center itself. Harper and her remaining officers made their last stand surrounded by the wreckage of their home. The aliens had taken the rest of the station, but they had paid a terrible price. They had lost more ships and soldiers at Outpost 7 than in their previous 5 conquests combined. "They're breaking through the main door," Foster reported. His uniform was torn and bloodied, but his eyes still burned with determination. Harper looked around at her remaining people. Only 47 defenders were still alive, but they had held out for over a month against an army. She was proud of what they had accomplished. "It's been an honor serving with you all," Harper said quietly. Then she activated the final explosive charges that Cooper had placed throughout the command center. The explosion destroyed the command center and killed the remaining defenders, but it also took down the alien command ship and damaged 3 escort vessels. The aliens had won the battle, but they had learned something that would haunt them for the rest of the war. Humans would rather die than surrender. They would fight to the last breath, the last bullet, the last heartbeat. The siege of Outpost 7 was over, but the legend of human resistance had just begun. Admiral Nicole Grant stood before the emergency session of the Colonial Assembly, her face grim as she delivered the news that would change everything. The destruction of Outpost 7 had reached every human colony, and the message was clear. The aliens were coming, and they showed no mercy. "The Zephyrian Collective commands over 3,000 ships," Grant told the assembled representatives. "We have fewer than 200 vessels in our entire defense fleet. By every military calculation, we should surrender now and hope for mercy." The assembly hall fell silent. Representatives from 17 star systems looked at each other with fear and uncertainty. Some had already begun evacuation preparations, loading civilian ships with refugees and essential supplies. Others argued for immediate negotiation with the aliens. "But I have another proposal," Grant continued, her voice growing stronger. We fight with everything we have. We turn every ship, every station, every world into a weapon. We show these aliens that humans are not cattle to be herded." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some representatives argued that resistance was suicide, that humanity would be wiped out completely. Others spoke of the sacrifice made at Outpost 7 and the need to honor those who had died defending human space. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would fight. The transformation of human space began immediately. Every civilian ship was retrofitted with weapons. Cargo haulers received missile pods. Passenger liners were converted into troop transports. Even small pleasure craft were armed with whatever weapons could be found. Captain Bobby Johnson had been a merchant marine for 15 years, hauling cargo between the colonies in his old freighter. Now he stood in a military briefing room, surrounded by other civilian captains who had volunteered for combat duty. None of them had military training, but they all understood what was at stake. "Your ships are not warships," the briefing officer explained. "But they can still fight. Use your cargo bays for missile storage. Use your industrial equipment as weapons. Most importantly, use your knowledge of space to outmaneuver the enemy." Bobby looked around at the other captains. There was Sarah Miller, who had piloted passenger shuttles for 20 years. There was Tom Bradley, whose mining ship had been converted into a weapons platform. They were ordinary people facing an extraordinary threat. The industrial transformation was even more dramatic. Every factory that had produced civilian goods was retooled for war production. Mining operations were expanded to gather raw materials for weapons. Research stations began developing new technologies to fight the alien threat. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had been studying alien biology at the University of New Chicago when the war began. Now she found herself leading a team of scientists studying captured Zephyrian technology from the wreckage at Outpost 7. Her laboratory had become one of the most important facilities in human space. Their weapons are more advanced than ours, Rodriguez explained to Admiral Grant during a secure video conference. But they have a weakness. Their energy systems operate on a specific frequency that can be disrupted by electromagnetic pulses. Grant leaned forward in her chair. Can we build weapons that exploit this weakness? We're working on it. Give us 2 weeks, and we'll have prototype disruptor weapons ready for testing. While the scientists worked, the military prepared for the worst. Every colony received detailed instructions on guerrilla warfare tactics. Civilian populations were trained to fight with improvised weapons. Children learned to hide in underground shelters that could withstand orbital bombardment. The first test of the new human strategy came at the mining colony of Kepler Station. The colony was home to only 3,000 people, but it sat on one of the richest asteroid fields in human space. The aliens would certainly want to capture it intact. Commander Steve Watson led the colony's defense force of 200 volunteers. They had 12 converted mining ships and a handful of improvised weapons. Against any normal enemy, they would have been hopelessly outnumbered, but Watson had studied the reports from Outpost 7. He knew that the aliens expected quick surrender from technologically inferior species. He planned to give them something very different. When the Zephyrian fleet arrived at Kepler Station, they found what appeared to be a normal mining operation. The humans continued their work, seemingly unaware of the alien presence. The aliens sent the usual surrender demand, confident that these miners would be easier to handle than the soldiers at Outpost 7. Watson's response was delivered by action rather than words. The mining ships suddenly revealed hidden weapons and attacked the alien fleet. The battle was brief but intense, with human ships ramming alien vessels and detonating mining charges at point-blank range. The aliens won the battle, but they lost 6 ships to the human defenders. More importantly, they discovered that the mining station was rigged with explosives. When they tried to board it, the entire facility exploded, destroying 3 more alien ships and taking Watson's volunteers with it. The pattern was repeated across human space. Every colony that the aliens approached chose to fight rather than surrender. Some battles lasted hours, others lasted days. The aliens won every engagement, but each victory cost them more ships and soldiers. Captain Alice Turner commanded the U.S. Valiant, a converted passenger liner that had been turned into a light cruiser. Her crew consisted of retired military personnel and civilian volunteers who had never seen combat. They patrolled the space between colonies, looking for opportunities to strike at alien supply lines. Turner's first engagement came when her ship encountered a Zephyrian supply convoy. The alien ships were larger and better armed, but Turner had advantages they did not expect. Her ship was faster and more maneuverable, and her crew was willing to take risks that no sane military commander would consider. The battle lasted 3 hours. Turner's ship darted between the alien vessels, firing missiles and using its superior speed to avoid return fire. When the Valiant's weapons were exhausted, Turner ordered a ramming attack on the lead alien ship. The collision destroyed both vessels, but it also scattered the supply convoy and delayed the alien advance. The psychological impact on the Zephyrian forces was devastating. They had conquered 43 species across the galaxy, and none had fought with such desperate determination. Most civilizations surrendered after losing a few ships. The humans seemed to welcome death as long as they could take aliens with them. War-leader Vexthal found himself facing a crisis he had never encountered before. His forces were winning every battle, but they were losing the war. Each human colony cost him more ships and soldiers. His troops were becoming afraid to board human stations, knowing that they might be walking into death traps. These humans are not like the others, Vexthal reported to the collective leadership. They do not fear death, they embrace it. Our forces are being worn down by their endless resistance. The collective's response was predictable: send more ships, use overwhelming force, crush the human resistance with sheer numbers. But Vextel knew that numbers alone would not be enough. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a weapon, and every victory against them came at a price the collective had never paid before. As the war entered its third month, the alien advance slowed to a crawl. They had captured 6 human colonies, but each conquest had cost them dearly. The remaining 11 colonies were better prepared and more determined than ever. Admiral Grant watched the tactical displays in her command center, seeing the red markers that showed alien positions throughout human space. The enemy was still winning, but they were no longer the unstoppable force they had been. They were learning to fear human space, and that fear was humanity's greatest weapon. The Zephyrian fleet approached New Dakota with confidence that had been shaken but not broken. War leader Vextel commanded 800 ships for the assault on the agricultural world, determined to end the costly resistance that had plagued his forces for months. New Dakota was defended by only 37 human vessels, a mix of converted civilian ships and outdated military craft. Colonel Steve Watson stood in the command bunker beneath New Dakota's capital city, watching the alien fleet take position in orbit. The bunker was hidden deep underground, connected to a network of tunnels that spread across the continent. Watson had spent weeks preparing for this moment, studying every report from the previous battles. "Sir, the evacuation is complete," reported Lieutenant Jenny Hayes from the communications console. "All civilian populations have been moved to the underground shelters. The surface cities are empty." Watson nodded grimly. The evacuation had taken 3 weeks, moving 4 million people into shelters that could survive orbital bombardment. The operation had been kept secret from the aliens, who believed they were approaching a normal colony with a frightened population. "What about the surface preparations?" Watson asked. "All buildings are rigged with explosives. Water supplies have been contaminated with industrial chemicals. Hidden weapons caches are placed throughout every city. The power grid can be overloaded to create electromagnetic pulses." Watson looked at the tactical display showing the alien fleet overhead. The Zephyrians had no idea what they were walking into. They expected another siege like Outpost 7, but Watson had learned from that battle. Instead of defending fixed positions, he would turn the entire planet into a trap. The alien assault began with orbital bombardment, designed to disable the planet's defenses. Energy beams lanced down from the sky, destroying military installations and government buildings. But the humans had already abandoned these targets, leaving behind only empty structures rigged with explosives. Captain Rick Johnson led a squadron of modified mining ships in a desperate attack on the alien fleet. His vessels were no match for the Zephyrian warships, but they served their purpose. The aliens focused their attention on the space battle, not realizing that the real threat was waiting on the planet's surface. Johnson's ships used kamikaze tactics, ramming alien vessels and detonating mining charges at point-blank range. The attack destroyed 15 alien ships and damaged many more, but it also eliminated the last of New Dakota's space defenses. The aliens now controlled the orbital space around the planet. The first alien landing craft touched down in the ruins of New Dakota's capital city. 50,000 Zephyrian soldiers poured out of the transports, expecting to find a terrified population ready to surrender. Instead, they found empty streets and abandoned buildings. "This is strange," muttered Commander Thakmer as he led his troops through the silent city. "Where are the humans?" The orbital scans showed millions of people living here. The answer came in the form of explosions that ripped through the city blocks. Watson's engineers had turned every building into a potential bomb, and now they began detonating them remotely. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy they could not see, surrounded by a city that was trying to kill them. The underground resistance began immediately. Watson's 300 volunteers emerged from hidden tunnels to attack alien patrols. They used hit-and-run tactics, striking quickly and disappearing back into the tunnel network. The aliens controlled the surface, But the humans owned the underground. Dr. Amy Rodriguez's electromagnetic weapons proved devastatingly effective in the urban environment. The hidden weapons caches contained disruptor devices that could disable alien equipment from a distance. Zephyrian soldiers found their weapons and communication systems failing at critical moments. "Sir, we're losing contact with patrol groups throughout the city," reported a Zephyrian communications officer. "Their equipment keeps malfunctioning." Thakmer studied the tactical display with growing frustration. His forces controlled the major buildings and intersections, but they were taking constant casualties from invisible enemies. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, striking without warning and vanishing like ghosts. The psychological warfare was even more effective than the physical attacks. The aliens found poisoned water supplies and contaminated food stores. They discovered that the humans had sabotaged their own infrastructure rather than let it fall into alien hands. The message was clear: humans would destroy everything before they would surrender it. Captain Lisa Evans led a team of volunteers in a daring raid on the alien command post. Her group used the city's storm drain system to approach the building undetected. When they emerged, they found the aliens had turned the mayor's office into their headquarters. The battle for the command post lasted 6 hours. Evans and her 20 volunteers fought room by room against 200 alien soldiers. They used improvised explosives and electromagnetic weapons to devastating effect. When the fighting was over, the command post was destroyed and Evans was dead, but she had eliminated the entire alien command structure. The occupation of New Dakota dragged on for 6 months. The aliens controlled the surface cities, but they could not stop the underground resistance. Every day brought new attacks, new sabotage, new casualties. The Zephyrians began to fear patrol duty. Knowing that any mission might be their last, Watson's volunteers became legends among the resistance. They lived in the tunnels like underground warriors, emerging only to strike at the occupying forces. They used the planet's own geography against the aliens, turning familiar streets into deadly mazes. The final blow came when Watson's engineers overloaded the planet's power grid. The resulting electromagnetic pulse disabled every piece of Zephyrian equipment on the surface. In the chaos that followed, the Resistance launched a coordinated attack on alien positions throughout the planet. The Battle of New Dakota's end lasted 3 days. The aliens had superior numbers and weapons, but they were fighting in an environment designed to kill them. Watson's volunteers struck from tunnels, sewers, and hidden bunkers. They used the city's own infrastructure as weapons, turning water mains into explosive devices and electrical systems into death traps. When the battle ended, the aliens had won control of a dead world. The surface cities were ruins, the infrastructure was destroyed, and the population was gone. The occupation had cost them 30,000 soldiers and damaged their reputation throughout the galaxy. "This planet is worthless," Fakemore reported to his superiors. "The humans have destroyed everything of value. We control only rubble and ash." Watson died in the final battle, but his sacrifice had achieved something remarkable. The siege of New Dakota had cost the aliens more resources than any previous conquest. More importantly, it had shown the galaxy that humans would destroy their own worlds rather than surrender them. The news of New Dakota's resistance spread throughout human space, inspiring other colonies to prepare similar defenses. The aliens had learned that conquering humanity was possible, but it would cost them everything they had. Supreme Commander Kethmer studied the casualty reports from New Dakota with growing alarm. His forces had lost more ships and soldiers in 6 months of fighting humans than in the previous 10 years of conquest. The collective was beginning to question whether this war was worth the cost. "Perhaps we should negotiate," suggested one of his advisors. "These humans are more trouble than they are worth." Kethmer shook his head. "The collective does not negotiate with inferior species. We will crush them with overwhelming force. Prepare the fleet for an assault on their homeworld. We will end this war by destroying Earth itself." The decision would prove to be the greatest mistake in Zephyrian history. The aliens were about to discover that attacking humanity's Birthworld would awaken something far more dangerous than colonial resistance. They were about to face an entire species united in desperate fury. Supreme Commander Kethmer stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger on the main display. Behind him stretched the greatest fleet the Zephyrian Collective had ever assembled, 800 warships carrying the finest soldiers in the galaxy. This would be the battle that ended human resistance forever. "Sir, we are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system," reported the tactical officer. "The humans have assembled their entire fleet to defend their homeworld." Kethmer smiled coldly. The humans had gathered every ship they could find, from military cruisers to converted pleasure craft. Intelligence reports counted over 2,000 vessels, but most were civilian ships with improvised weapons. Against his battle-tested fleet, they would be swept aside like leaves in a storm. Admiral Nicole Grant stood in the command center of the orbital defense station above Earth, watching the alien fleet approach. She had spent months preparing for this moment, turning the entire solar system into a fortress. Every asteroid had been hollowed out and filled with weapons. Every space station had been converted into a weapons platform. "All stations report ready," announced Captain Tony Rodriguez from the communications console. His converted cruise ship UES Liberty was part of the outer defense ring, crewed by retired military personnel and civilian volunteers, like thousands of others. He had chosen to stand and fight rather than flee. The battle began in the asteroid belt, where Commander Helen Price led a mining fleet that had been converted into the first line of defense. Her ships were designed for industrial work, not combat, but they had advantages the aliens did not expect. They knew every rock in the belt, every hiding place, every tactical advantage. "Here they come," Price announced over the communication channel. "Remember, we're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to make them pay for every inch of space." The mining ships used their industrial equipment as weapons, turning asteroid mining charges into massive explosives. They hid behind rocks and struck without warning, then disappeared back into the asteroid field. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that treated the vacuum of space like home territory. The first major engagement cost the aliens 60 ships and gave the humans valuable time to prepare their next line of defense. Price's miners had done their job, but most of them would not live to see the final battle. They had chosen to sacrifice themselves to buy time for Earth's defenders. Captain Frank Anderson led a squadron of converted racing ships in the second wave of attacks. His vessels were small and fast, designed for speed rather than combat. They darted between the alien warships like angry wasps, firing missiles and using their superior maneuverability to avoid return fire. "Stay close to the big ships," Anderson ordered his pilots. "Use their own size against them. They can't fire on us without hitting each other." The racing ships were eventually overwhelmed by superior numbers, but they had achieved their purpose. The alien fleet was scattered and disorganized, no longer the perfect formation that had entered the system. Anderson's sacrifice had created opportunities for the next wave of defenders. The main battle took place in orbit around Earth itself. The human fleet was a mixture of everything that could fly: military vessels, cargo ships, passenger liners, even private yachts armed with whatever weapons could be mounted. They faced the alien fleet in the largest space battle in human history. Captain Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the Liberty as the two fleets closed on each other. His ship had been a luxury cruise liner before the war, carrying wealthy passengers on tours of the outer planets. Now it was armed with missile pods and crewed by people who had volunteered to die for their homeworld. "All ships, this is Admiral Grant," came the voice over the communication channel. "Today we fight. Not just for Earth, but for the future of humanity. Show these aliens what it means to threaten our home." The battle was chaos. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as energy beams and missiles filled the space around Earth. The humans fought with desperate courage, using ramming attacks and suicide runs to destroy alien vessels. Every human ship that died took aliens with it. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had spent months preparing for this moment. Her electromagnetic weapons had been installed throughout the solar system, connected to Earth's power grid and every orbital facility. When she activated the network, the entire system became a massive disruptor array. Initiating planetary electromagnetic pulse, Rodriguez announced from her laboratory deep beneath the surface. All human ships, prepare for system shutdown and restart. The pulse swept through space like an invisible wave, disabling hundreds of alien ships simultaneously. Their advanced technology became useless as electromagnetic fields disrupted their power systems and weapons. In the chaos that followed, the human fleet launched a coordinated counterattack. The aliens had never encountered anything like it. Their ships drifted helplessly as human vessels closed in for the kill. The humans used simple kinetic weapons and explosive charges that were immune to electromagnetic interference. The tide of battle turned in humanity's favor, Kethmore watched. In horror as his fleet was torn apart by an enemy he had underestimated. The electromagnetic pulse had disabled his command ship, and he was forced to watch helplessly as human vessels rammed his finest warships. His communications were dead, his weapons were offline, and his fleet was scattered. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human fleet," reported a technician who had managed to restart a sensor array. "They're preparing for another attack." The final assault came from every direction at once. Human ships that had been hiding behind Earth's moon emerged to attack the alien rearguard. Orbital platforms that had been silent suddenly blazed with weapon fire. Even civilian ships joined the attack, using whatever weapons they could find. The Battle of Seoul lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the alien fleet was destroyed and Supreme Commander Kethmer was a prisoner aboard a human vessel. The cost had been enormous. Earth's population was reduced by half, and 12 of the 17 human colonies lay in ruins. But humanity had achieved something thought impossible: the mighty Zephyrian Collective. Conquerors of 43 species had been defeated by a race they had never heard of a year earlier. The news spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire, inspiring enslaved species to rise in rebellion. The Collective's empire began to collapse as their subjects realized that the great conquerors could be beaten. Admiral Grant stood in the ruins of her command center, looking out at the wreckage that filled Earth's orbit. The victory had cost everything, but it had saved humanity from extinction. More importantly, it had created a legend that would echo through galactic history. "Send a message to all surviving colonies," Grant ordered. "Tell them that Earth still stands. Tell them that humanity endures." The message that went out to the galaxy was simple but profound. A species that had been unknown a year earlier had stood against impossible odds and won. They had shown that freedom was worth any price, that some things were more important than life itself. The survivors of Outpost 7, released from alien captivity, became living symbols of human determination. Their story spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring other species to resist their oppressors. The phrase, "they would rather die than kneel," became synonymous with human nature in a dozen alien languages. Years later, when galactic historians tried to understand how such a small species had defeated the greatest military power in the galaxy, they always came back to the same conclusion. Humanity's victory had not been won through superior technology or brilliant strategy, but through the simple refusal to surrender. The Battle of Seoul became known as the moment when the galaxy learned to fear and respect humanity. It was not the weapons or the ships that made aliens dread human history, but the knowledge that humans would pay any price for freedom. In the end, that was the most terrifying weapon of all.